Hi guys, Jasmo here, and today I have for you a guide for the leveling strategy for a ranger. It's a bow leveling strategy that uses a rain of arrows and the raider ascendancy. It's a very quick way to level your character and map very quickly, or do heist if you want to do that at the beginning of the league, which is a strategy that I'm going to be talking a little bit more about in my next video. But basically I wanted to share this strategy because it's very powerful, but it is a little bit complicated and requires managing multiple parts of the build early on in a Leaguestart scenario, so it's not the most intuitive thing ever. That's why I'm going to be sharing the video where I'm going to talk about the transition through the acts, which skill gems you're going to use, which items to look for, how to craft your gear. But first let me tell you about the advantage of leveling with Rain of Arrows over something like Toxic Rain, for example, right? Because Toxic Rain used to be like the go-to leveling strategy for bow builds or just characters in general that want to go like really quickly through the story and then just respec into something else, or maybe stay in that build and just make a quick mapper or quick heister, or even sometimes quick lab runner for some people. But the reason why we're playing Rain of Arrows now instead of Toxic Rain is because Toxic Rain, the advantage of Toxic Rain was the fact that you didn't need any gear in the early stages of the leveling of the character, like just until like you getting into the maps and early maps. You didn't need pretty much any gear because the base damage was carrying it. So it was much easier because you just go with the basic life and resistances on your items. You don't even need a bow with anything. You just have maybe some like bench crafted damage over time or chaos damage, and then just get a base with high attack speed. But unfortunately, the damage of Toxic Rain has been nerfed, and also the slow on the Toxic Rain has been nerfed so that enemies actually run out of the damage faster, which makes them take even less damage than before. And those nerfs together make it so that this is no longer the best strategy for leveling with bows like this. And even though this strategy requires much more gear manipulation, much more preparation, it's way more it's like way faster, way more powerful, and that's why I recommend that. So I'm just gonna go basically from the Act 1. You want to start with Galvanic Arrow. In the notes you're gonna see all the like breakdown for different skill gems that you use. So you want to use Galvanic Arrow, and then the first thing you're gonna add to it in terms of support gems are going to be Mirage Archer and Onslaught. If you only have green sockets and you don't have triple green, then you just add the Mirage Archer. It's actually more consistent, it's much more damage than the Onslaught. Onslaught doesn't proc often enough because you're not like one-shotting everything in the beginning unless you have like a really good weapon. So I definitely recommend first adding Mirage Archer, and then if you have third linked socket, then you add Onslaught. And then in the other links you're gonna have Shrapnel Ballista, and you're gonna have Pierce there, and from level 8 you're gonna have added Cold in there. For mobility early on, you're gonna have Dash or Frost Blink. Frost Blink is a little bit better because it also chills or freezes the enemies, which helps you, which helps your survivability, helps you kill more stuff and your damage and so on. So Frost Blink is a little bit better. And then since level 10, we're also gonna be using Blink Arrow. You can also use Smoke Mine, but unfortunately Smoke Mine and Dash/Frost Blink sharing cooldown makes it so that it's not gonna always feel as smooth. But with this setup, you're always gonna be able to do this double movement ability trick where you like use Blink Arrow, and then right after Blink Arrow you can Dash or Frost Blink. It feels very smooth, and especially once you get some passives and some attack speed and so on. From level 12, also, maybe let's talk about the gear, because in the beginning you actually want some gear, right? So there are certain things that you want on your character. You want iron rings. So iron rings, make sure that they are showing up on your filter with a sound so that you can hear when they drop behind you. When, for example, one of your Shrapnel Ballista totems kills monsters and like iron ring drops behind you, make sure that it shows on your loot filter. So you want 2 iron rings. You also want the Rustic Sash, the highest percentage you can find. And you also want to look out for a quiver as soon as you can. If you can get a quiver like close to level 4, that it gives you extra damage, it's like having another iron ring. It's a massive amount of damage, and it really helps because we are dealing damage with hits with either the Galvanic Arrow or the Rain of Arrows. So these items really help. So make sure they show up on your loot filter. In terms of the bow, you're going to be starting with, of course, the crude bow, and then you're looking for vendors or for drops, just the standard progression of bows. You can use short bow if you find it. You can later use the long bow. I don't recommend actually buying it. You're gonna most likely find it. Just make sure your loot filter shows even white long bows at this stage of the game, so that you can just pick one up from the ground. It will save you a transmutation orb because the longbows cost a transmute. So just pick up longbow and then make sure to like slap any essence on it, and it's very likely gonna give you some extra damage. So that's gonna be like your first upgrade, which you can get like before Merveil. If you get like the longbow plus an essence on it before Merveil, your damage is gonna be looking very good. So make sure that you pick up any essence you find on your way until you have a bunch of them, so that you can keep using them on the bows that you find as an upgrade, and you're gonna end up just slapping some insane bows sometimes, because a couple of elemental rolls can make a massive difference to your damage, and you're never gonna have a problem with damage pretty much with this build if you do that. So from level 12 we are getting Rain of Arrows. So we are linking, we have two setups. One is Ballista Totem and one is the self-cast. The self-cast is gonna be Rain of Arrows plus Mirage Archer plus Onslaught. And then the other setup is going to be Rain of Arrows plus Ballista Totem plus added Cold. For mobility, we're going to be still using a Dash, Frostblink, and Dash or Frostblink and Blink Arrow. And then we're going to be using also a Vitality. Vitality is something you can pick up from Act 1 as well. And you want to keep it on kind of a low level. You can also buy early on Precision, just so that you can keep it on a low level, because we're going to need Precision at some point. But it's not, depending on what gear you get, you might need it at lower level or higher level, so keep it at low level at first. Then when you get to Act 2, you're going to get Herald of Ash and Herald of Ice. Those are the two heralds I recommend using because they help your clear the most. The clear with these is really good. And then also we use a Blood Rage. Blood Rage is the reason why we're using Vitality. Normally Vitality is not needed, but it's much more comfortable if you can have Blood Rage just going on and Vitality sustaining or like almost sustaining your life. If you're like using, 1 HP per second, it doesn't matter, but like almost sustaining your life with Vitality to counteract the degen from Blood Rage is really comfy and allows you to just run through the zones with just having extra attack speed and extra frenzy charges, which is very powerful. And then when it comes to the passive skill tree, maybe I'll go through the passive skill tree, which is going to give you a little bit more context for how we're going to be doing this, so that you know what we have access to early on, because that's going to also explain some things about the skill gems. So early on, we are starting with the projectile damage nodes, then we're going to the aspect of the eagle, and then we can go either through a bow damage and crit to aspect of the lynx, or you can opt to also go through bow attack speed and accuracy if you don't want to respec this area later on, because later on we're going to be picking up precise technique, which means we cannot crit, which means these nodes lose the crit, but early on they are the strongest. Then we're going to go through primal spirits, which is going to help your mana a lot. You're going to just pop flask, and then no matter what flask you have, you're just gonna get so much mana on hit by just hitting stuff, and it also is going to give you enough strength and intelligence to equip your for example Frost Blink, to equip your Vitality, and so on. So this is a pretty important node. Then we're gonna go through finesse to quick step. This is gonna give you some extra movement speed. We are prioritizing a lot of movement speed in this, and then we're gonna skip this for now, and we're gonna go straight down to precise technique. We're basically picking up movement speed, and then rushing to precise technique, and then at this point basically this keystone gives you 40% more attack damage if your accuracy rating is higher than the max life, but you never deal critical strikes. So that means that it gives you a little bit less than 40%. It's usually like around 30% more damage, which is still an absolutely massive increase. You want to make sure that since the time you pick that, you need to make sure that you have more accuracy than life. You check it on your character sheet. You can see if you select any attack, preferably the attack you're going to be using, which is the Rain of Arrows. You can see the accuracy rating, and let's say you have like 600 accuracy rating and 500 life at this time, everything is good, as long as accuracy rating is higher. If your accuracy rating somehow dips lower than life because you just find gear with tons of life on it, then you can turn on precision, and you can can also pick up these nodes here, which give you not only bow damage and attack speed, but also increased accuracy rating. Then we are basically going to rush for the onslaught, so graceful assault, and then we're gonna pick this up. At this point, you could drop the onslaught gem from your skills, but you can also keep it for more consistent onslaught. After that, we're going to probably head down here and either pick up this damage. I think we do this. We pick up this damage, the primeval force, and you can opt to select the 15 to all elemental resistances if you're struggling with the resistances on gear, because in terms of the bandits, I recommend just killing all the bandits. The 2 extra skill points are gonna give you a better deal than this, right? Because you can put 1 skill point into elemental resistances, 1 into mana leech, and that solves these issues. Just as well as the Alira, but you also have the option of respecking these things later. At this point, roughly at the point where you're picking up Primeval Force, you're going to be ascending for the first time, and you pick Onslaught. Once you pick Onslaught, you remove the Onslaught gem from your skills and you put something else there, right? I'm gonna explain which gems, but usually it's gonna be like at the time where you're like getting a 4-link, and then I'm gonna explain what 4-link you get. But I guess let's do that now, because it kind of goes hand in hand, right? Like I said, this is a fairly complicated build. So I wish I could just tell you like first the gems and then the build, but it's not gonna make any sense if I do that. So at this point, when you pick up the onslaught, that's when you actually want to drop the onslaught from your gems. So you're going to swap to a 4-link. The 4-link you're looking for is going to be actually 2 green and 2 blue. In order to get 2 green, 2 blue, you can either find that, or you can find an item that has a base that is dexterity intelligence base, so requires dexterity and intelligence to equip, which is an evasion energy shield base, and that kind of a base can be very easily chromed into this setup. And you're going to be using a Rain of Arrows, a Mirage Archer, Physical to Lightning, and Trinity. Physical to Lightning is not always necessary. You can also use another gem here, but early on, you're not going to have an access to a blue gem here, so it would be only like elemental damage with weapons, something like that. So I would just stick to the Physical to Lightning plus Trinity, because it's going to make it very easy to balance your Trinity. That's right, we're balancing Trinity early on as well. It's very, very easy. You just need to pay attention. I'm going to explain in a moment how to do that. But basically, this is the 4-link you're looking for, and that's going to be the main damage setup for you. And as you can see, we're converting here 50% of the damage to lightning, and then we're going to be converting also rest of the damage to cold. So you can either pick these nodes, Winter Spirit, and then convert 40% Fizz to Cold, but if you're not playing in SSF, there's actually a much better way to do this. Instead of picking these nodes, you simply buy Crimsorrow. This costs 1 chaos at the league start. The first chaos orb you find, or even if you find like, if you have like spare alterations which you can trade, or like alchemy orbs which you can trade for a chaos, or just message someone, hey, can I give you a few alterations or whatever for this, and you're gonna basically buy this, and it's gonna convert 50% of your fizz damage to cold. That's gonna make it so that you can use physical bows, you can use elemental bows, and you're always gonna just be dealing purely elemental damage, and you're always gonna be like have very, very easy time of balancing Trinity. So how to balance Trinity? If you look at the damage, if you hover over your skill in game, it's gonna give you a breakdown of how much lightning, cold, and fire it's doing, right? So you see these brackets, right? It goes from 456 to 2030, right? We have here another one from 700 to 1000, from 800 to 1500. So every single time we hit, any of those can be the highest, right? Because the highest rolls are higher than the lowest rolls of the other ones, right? So if we only look at these two, right? Just look at these two, right? It's gonna very likely alternate between fire and cold being the highest, with fire being the highest most of the time, right? So if I was, for example, in this setup, right? If I was in this setup and I had a choice between like crafting fire, cold, or lightning damage on my gear, I would probably craft cold damage on my gear, right? If I was only looking at this, if I was doing like no lightning damage somehow, right? I would be looking at this and I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna add some cold damage so that this can be more than this. Very often, lightning damage is also the one that you wanna craft, because lightning damage has a very, very low bottom roll, and very, very high rolls. So lightning damage has very high variance between the low rolls and high rolls, which means it's actually very good for Trinity. Like lightning damage is very, very good for Trinity. And cold damage having like the lowest spread is like the least good for Trinity, but like either way, it's very, very easy to fit. If I had, for example, too much fire damage, right? Let's look only at cold and fire now, right? And let's say cold, I had 710 cold to 1.2 cold, and then I had 1.2 fire to 1.5 fire. At this point, I would remove my Herald of Ash, for example, to lower the fire damage, and instead I would put, let's say, Herald of Lightning or some other aura that I can get, and make sure that I don't have this fire low roll being higher than the top roll of the another element, right? Only 2 elements need to be hitting the highest, right? So only 2 elements matter. If the third one is like lower and these 2 are very high and they alternate, it's totally fine, right? So that's basically how you balance Trinity. You make sure that these ranges overlap, right? These ranges overlap. There's a lot of numbers in common between 800 and 1500 and 700 and 1200. There's a lot of numbers there overlapping. Huge percentage of those is going to overlap, so the Trinity is going to work. And of course, in practice, you're going to see that as you're running, and in the top left corner, you're going to have this circle. If it's filled in with 3 colors, that means your Trinity is working perfectly well. Okay, so that's what you do. You get the Crimsorrow. Usually you get it like Act 2, Act 3, Act 4, whenever you can just buy it, you just get it. And if you're in SSF, you just pick up these nodes with Winter Spirit and you convert 40% Fizz to Cold, and that way you can even use Fizz Bows and still use Trinity, because Trinity is just a insanely powerful gem. Okay, after that, what do we do? After that, the passive skills that we get are going to be evasion and movement speed, more movement speed, and fleet foot, which is going to give you movement speed, and cooldown recovery rate for your movement skills, which is going to make you very, very fast. And then you can go either through these nodes, or actually even better through these nodes. This is going to give you extra life and extra strength for perhaps some requirements if you need them for your gems, but usually you will not need them because you're going to have some strength in it on your amulet. That's what you want to use. So you can either pass through this and get some extra accuracy as well. So we're going to pick up Avatar of the Hunt, which is going to give us a bunch of evasion and movement speed and bow damage. And then we can maybe pick up some life if your accuracy is high enough, right? After that, we're going to be moving toward Charisma to get our aura reservation. So after Charisma, we pick up increased mana reservation efficiency of skills, and here we pick up also Grace has 25% increased mana reservation efficiency, and once you do that, you add Grace to your build. This is gonna make you a lot more tanky, and it's gonna make it so that you're not really taking damage from anything most of the time as you're running through the mobs. After that, we also want to pick up one with nature. This is something you pick up as soon as you get the double conversion going, because this gives you increase to elemental damage with attack skills, and since we make our damage elemental, we can do that, and it also gives you 8 to all elemental resistances. It's a very, very strong node. After that, you can either head through here to Force of Nature. The 10% pen is very, very powerful, and then you can pick up some life here, and then you can also go either through here, or I think through here is the best way. You can pick up this life, and if you have too low accuracy, you can always grab a bow mastery that gives you 100% plus 100, it's like flat 100 to accuracy rating per green socket on equipped bow. And then you can just get a bow. Let's say you have like 2 or 3 green sockets on it, it's gonna give you 300 accuracy multiplied by all the modifiers that you have to accuracy, which is going to be a lot, and it's gonna be very, very easy to make sure that your precise technique is still working. And after that, finally, we're gonna be going for Master Fletcher, and that's gonna be it when we finish this story, or when we finish this leveling around like level 61, 62, something like that. So let's talk more about the gems, right? Because I skipped the last gems. So we were at the point where we're using Rain of Arrows, Mirage Archer Onslaught, Rain of Arrows, Ballista Totem added Cold, Dash or Frostblink and Blake Arrow for our movement speed, and then Vitality, and then we're using also Herald of Ash, Herald of Ice, Blood Rage. In Act 3, you're going to also get Sniper's Mark. Even though Sniper's Mark is not benefiting us in the sense that it's not splitting our arrows because we're using like an area attack, it's still a projectile and it still applies to our damage. And then of course Precision. You're gonna need to be very careful with leveling Precision and Vitality just to make sure that you have like extra mana, because you need to keep in mind that you're still going to have to fit Grace later on. And then of course the 4-link setup after transition is going to be Rain of Arrows, Mirage Archer, and then Fist to Lightning plus Trinity. And for the Ballista it's going to be Rain of Arrows, Ballista Totem, added Cold, and then faster attacks for the first part of the campaign. And then we're also adding anything else? Not really. You can also, instead of Herald of Ash and Herald of Ice, let's say you had a very low fire damage, but you needed more fire damage to proc Trinity, and that could save you. Then you can run, for example, the Anger Aura, which is going to give you a lot of flat fire damage. Anger Aura is very, very strong, and you can definitely run that. If you want to, you can skip the Grace and run Anger, or you can skip one of the Heralds, like Herald of Ash, and run that instead. It's going to be very, very powerful, and it can help you at times to fix your Trinity, and that is something that you definitely need to keep in mind, that you can use it. Final setup, this is what we're going to be using after Act 6, when we get access to all the skill gems from Lily. We can swap the physical to lightning. If you have your Trinity from other sources, you can use concentrated effect, which is going to be the most damage, or you can also use elemental damage with attacks if you have a red socket. Rain of Arrows, Ballista Totem, a Conk effect, and Focused Ballista is going to be the final here. That's final setup here for the Ballista that's going to give us the most damage. Focused Ballista is replacing the faster attacks, and Conk effect is replacing the added cold, because at this point the added cold is not really doing much for us. Then we also can add Second Wind together with the Frostblink or Dash and the Blink Arrow, which is gonna make you so fast. It's gonna make it so that you can just speed around and just keep using these mobility skills like a maniac. And that's basically it. That's the setup for the gems. It's all gonna be in the POB, as you can see here. And this, let me talk a little bit more about the strategy, I guess, right? So in terms of when I would use this, right? My personal strategy for the next league is going to be to do a lot of infinite heisting, right? I'm going to get to level 61, and then I'm just gonna bounce between level 61 and 62, de-level myself, and do heist over and over to get the currency early on. I think it's a very, very powerful strategy, and this is the best build for this by far, because it has a guaranteed phasing, and it has guaranteed onslaught with a bunch of onslaught effect. This character is the fastest, and it's basically the best thing to do if you want to be heisting around those levels. It peaks at those levels very, very hard, and it just melts everything. It's tanky enough. It's very, very fast. The only thing that could compete with this would be some kind of like a Guardian setup, because with minions, if you could find like some kind of specters that work well at these levels, plus zombies like minions that you don't need to summon, then you can scale a lot of movement speed, have perma onslaught, but unfortunately you don't have the perma phasing, which is why I decided to go with Raider. You can level very, very quickly. When I do this strategy, I end up doing the final lab, the Merciless lab. I basically pick up first from the lab the Rapid Assault, then I pick up the Avatar of the Chase, and then I pick up Quartz Infusion for the phasing at the end. And when I do my third lab, I'm around level 60-61. And you can totally do that. You have enough damage to do it. You have enough survivability to do it. And I've done these runs in under 4 hours pretty much every single time. It's a very, very fast way to level. But you, of course, need to keep checking if you have the precise technique and if you have the Trinity active. If you have those two, they're going to carry you very, very hard, and you're going to have a massive amount of damage. You're going to go insanely fast. And after also you pick up these nodes here with weapon elemental damage and 10% chance to freeze, shock, and ignite times 2. You're gonna be shocking, freezing, and igniting even though you're not critting. So also your Herald of Ice is gonna be proccing. Your Herald of Ash is gonna be, of course, proccing all the time, and the clear is very, very strong. So that's basically it. If you have any questions, you can post them in the comments below. I'll post the POB in the description, and because there are no patch notes and there are no like changes, buffs, and nerfs, this build is going to work in the exact same way. In terms of how to progress this build past the leveling through the campaign, that's a topic for another video, but you can simply go into an omniscient setup, just a generic omniscient setup, and you can go into lightning arrow, you can stay rain of arrows, you can go galvanic arrow or anything else you like. You can go tornado shot omniscience if you want to invest a lot of currency into this build, and that's basically how you level that kind of a character. As far as I know from seeing the passives for the new league on the Atlas tree, actually MFing is going to be very, very strong, and like low tier mapping, low investment mapping is going to be extremely powerful. So this is the type of a character that's definitely going to carry you through early maps. If you just put omniscience on it and just get a bunch of like elemental damage, get just like an elemental bow with a bunch of flat elemental on it. You can spam essences. Oh, also, once you get to like level 60 or 61, not sure what's the requirement, you can get a reflex bow. Get a steel wood bow. It's called a steel wood bow, which is going to give you some movement speed. You get it to 20% quality, and then you just spam essences of anger on it. If you spam essences of anger, and if you hit another elemental roll, then you just craft the third elemental roll, and you can have like triple elemental roll bow with like some other mods on it for suffixes. It's going to be very, very powerful, and it's going to carry you really hard. So that's basically it. Let me know in the comments below if you have any questions for this, and thank you so much for watching. See you next time.